I call Phil Twyford.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. As my colleague Jenny Celeste said, Labor is supporting this bill. There's a number of important principles that are reflected in the policy intent of the bill. And let me just touch on them. The bill will improve the process for levy setting by requiring the government to set out a funding policy in line with the principles in the bill, and which will inform ACC's public consultation on the levy rates. It's a good thing. Setting a funding policy will also improve the transparency of the process, of the levy setting process, so the public's better informed. So far, so good. And perhaps most importantly, the bill would have improved the framework for funding ACC's accounts through levies by replacing the current provisions with a more comprehensive set of principles. Now, the big concern, Mr Chairman, that we have with Part 1 is that the very principles enshrined in the title of the bill, financial responsibility and transparency, have been watered down. And as Jenny Celeste said, there's more than a little echo of what we saw with the Health and Safety Bill. A bill that is brought to the House that sets out to fix a political problem for the government with great fanfare, goes to Select Committee, and then the usual vested interests rock up to the committee and exert a bit of influence. And then the result is a 10-minute apology from Jonathan Young in his most recent contribution. A 10-minute apology for the replacement of a lot of musts with a lot of shoulds. And yeah, that's right, coulda, shoulda, woulda. Thank you, Ian Lees-Galloway. So really the good intent of the bill that Labor supported, we still support the intent of it, the basic principles, have been significantly undermined by this kind of weak-kneed backsliding at Select Committee that unfortunately has made this bill a lot more effective than it otherwise would have been. So the principal example of that watering down is to be found in Part 1, Section 166A, subsection 2. Levies, instead of must be set in accordance with the following principles, it's been replaced with when making these recommendations in respective regulations, the ministers must have regard to the following principles. A much weaker and more inferior set of words. It's sad that a government that so transparently cooked up a funding crisis when it came to office, a manufactured funding crisis in relation to ACC, and then hiked up the levies, now seeks to repair some of that political damage with this bill, but bottled out when they got to Select Committee with just the slightest bit of pressure, bit of influence from the vested interests. So what could have been a good bill could, should, would, it must be a good bill, but it won't be under the dilution of its core principles at Select Committee, and that's a shame. And I want to really just add my voice to the support for Sue Moroney's supplementary order paper number 123, which I think would pretty much repair the damage that was done at Select Committee. And it sets out, for example, in clause 4, to make it very clear that the public good in this case means the public interest with regard to reducing injury and accidents. The public good shouldn't be some kind of mask for the government to milk ACC to support its ever-diminishing aspiration for getting the books back into surplus. Because let's be really clear about it, that's what has happened. That is the story of this government's ACC policy over the last few years. And Sue Moroney's SOP makes it very clear in clause 5 that the state of the government's fiscal position is not to be a consideration when setting ACC levies. Now, if the government was true to the principles, if it was true to the policy intent, if it was true to its rhetoric, then it would support Sue Moroney's SOP. Why not? Why should the ACC be used as a cash cow to try to fund the government surplus target.
Called Sue Moroney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't want to use